Women removed after plane outburst. Passenger meltdown on American Airlines flight after refusing to use headphones. A dramatic incident unfolded aboard an American Airlines flight from Miami to Tampa when a passenger was removed from the aircraft after refusing to follow the airline's basic in-flight etiquette rules. The woman caused a scene after playing videos on her phone using the loudspeaker and reacting aggressively when flight attendants asked her to use headphones. Now it's time to dig deeper and understand the full story through this AI
Picture
podcast.
this. You've just battled your way through the absolute maze of airport security.
Oh, yeah, we all know that feeling.
Right. You have navigated the crowded, chaotic terminal, finally found your gate, and you are currently settling into your cramped airplane seat.
Finally.
Exactly. Your seatbelt is fastened, your carry-on is safely jammed under the seat in front of you, and you let out this long, well-deserved sigh of relief. You are ready for a peaceful flight.
Just waiting for takeoff.
Yeah. You close your eyes,
Yeah.
and then suddenly, piercing right through the quiet hum of the cabin, the person sitting an inch away from you starts blasting a video on their phone.
Ah, the worst.
No headphones, just tinny, loud audio echoing through the entire row. We have all been there.
Oh, absolutely.
You do that awkward, polite side eye, hoping they realize their mistake and reach for their AirPods. Well, welcome to today's deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Our mission today is to dissect a viral, highly chaotic incident aboard an American Airlines flight that started over exactly this, a phone speaker, and ended with a literal police intervention.
Just wild.
We are pulling from a stack of sources today: eyewitness accounts, a viral TikTok video posted on February 26th, and some very revealing reports on shifting airline device policies.
It is great to dive into this because looking at our sources, this is, it's so much more than a straightforward story about a passenger acting out.
Right.
It is actually a fascinating case study in conflict escalation and really the rapidly shifting boundaries of basic in-flight etiquette.
Yeah, the rules are definitely changing.
They are. We're looking at a situation that went from 0 to 100 in a matter of minutes. By unpacking this one incident, we can actually see how the entire aviation industry is fundamentally changing the rules of how we are allowed to behave in shared spaces.
So let's set the scene based on those eyewitness accounts and the viral video. We are on an American Airlines flight. The route is from Miami to Tampa.
A very quick flight.
Super quick. Now, for anyone who flies, you know that is an incredibly short hop. You're barely in the air before the captain is telling you to prepare for landing.
Exactly.
But the crucial detail here is that this plane has not even left the gate yet. They are still sitting on the tarmac in Miami.
Which puts everyone in that incredibly specific high-stress boarding phase.
Right, everyone's just trying to get settled.
Yeah, the aisles are congested, people are stressed about overhead bin space, and the flight attendants are rushing to complete their safety checks so they can push back on time.
It's a pressure cooker.
It really is. The psychology of a confined space like a commercial aircraft is unique. You are essentially trapped in a metal tube, you've surrendered control over your environment, and your personal space is reduced to a few square inches.
Yeah.
In that environment, people tend to fiercely guard whatever tiny bit of autonomy they have left.
Okay, let's unpack this, because right in the middle of that pressurized environment, a female passenger is sitting in her seat watching videos out loud on her phone.
Just out loud.
Out loud. The flight attendants noticed this, and according to the reports, they approached her twice. Yes, and the sources emphasized that they asked her politely both times to either lower the volume on her phone or simply use headphones.
Which is a completely standard request. It's something flight attendants do constantly.
Right, it shouldn't be a big deal.
Exactly. It's the baseline of the unwritten social contract we all implicitly agree to when we buy a ticket. But her reaction completely fractures that contract.
She just says no.
She refuses. She becomes visibly agitated, shouting at the cabin crew, and she starts loudly defending herself with a very specific metric. She screams, and I quote, "I played a video for 30 seconds at 50% volume, and that's the reason you're kicking me off."
I find that defense so revealing.
How so?
Well, she is actively trying to litigate the exact metrics of her rule breaking. It's as if she believes there's an acceptable mathematical threshold for disrupting a flight.
Right, like there's an allowance.
Exactly. 30 seconds, 50% volume. She is quantifying it to minimize it. But from an operational standpoint, the flight crew isn't walking around with a decibel meter or a stopwatch. The metrics just do not matter to them.
What's fascinating here is you are hitting on the core disconnect there.
Yeah.
In her mind, the argument is about the volume of a phone. In the crew's mind, the issue is entirely about compliance and order.
That makes sense.
When a passenger defiantly refuses a direct, simple instruction while the plane is still on the ground, it acts as a massive behavioral red flag.
Because what comes next?
Exactly. The crew immediately has to wonder how this person might behave at 30,000 feet if a genuine emergency were to occur. If you cannot follow a polite request about an iPhone, how will you react during severe turbulence?
Oh, wait, let me play devil's advocate for a second. Is it possible the crew overreacted?
Wow.
Because she argues back to the flight attendants, saying sarcastically, that sounds like a them problem, referring to the crew's request. Obviously, that is incredibly rude. But does a rude comment warrant derailing a whole flight?
It's not just about the rudeness, though. It's about the refusal to participate in the shared community of the cabin. When she calls it a them problem, she is explicitly stating that she does not believe the rules apply to her.
Wow. Yeah.
That forces the flight attendants to make a very hard pivot. They have to transition instantly from being customer service agents.
Welcoming you aboard, helping with bags.
Right. They transition from that to being enforcers of federal order. They lose the luxury of giving her the benefit of the doubt.
And the visual contrast of that pivot is captured perfectly in the TikTok video from February 26th.
It really is striking.
You actually see the flight attendant standing in the aisle using textbook de-escalation techniques.
Open palms.
Yes, palms open, making deliberate, calming hand gestures, keeping their voice lowered, clearly just trying to bring the temperature down.
And right across from that calm professional is the passenger, sitting in her seat, hurling profanities and screaming.
It's a crazy split screen.
It is. And it shows how de-escalation tactics can sometimes backfire if the other person is entirely committed to the conflict. The flight attendant is trying to soothe the situation, but the passenger perceives that calm demeanor as patronizing, which just fuels her outrage further.
And that dynamic leads directly to the passenger making a massive demand.
Oh, yes.
She screams at the crew, go ahead and call the police, and she drops a major expletive right there.
Literally daring them.
She is daring the flight crew to bring law enforcement onto the plane over her phone volume. Now, the sources do note that she later claimed she had actually stopped playing the video after that second warning.
Right.
But by the time she's screaming and daring them to call the cops, does the video even matter anymore?
The video is entirely irrelevant at that point.
Yeah.
The disruption has morphed from a minor audio annoyance into a major behavioral threat. The flight is officially delayed on the tarmac, the surrounding passengers are anxious, and the threat she poses to the safety and order of the cabin is active.
The real situation now.
Exactly. Flight crews do not play poker. If a passenger escalates to the point of demanding police intervention, the crew will oblige.
And this brings us to a really crucial piece of context from our sources that might explain that rapid escalation.
This is key.
The TikTok user who filmed the February 26th ordeal provided some vital perspective in their caption. This witness explicitly referred to the woman as a drunk lady, noting that she became immediately angry and rude the moment the flight attendants asked her to use headphones.
That witness observation provides a very logical framework for what otherwise seems like a completely nonsensical timeline.
It really connects the dots.
Going from a polite request about headphones to an absolute screaming meltdown involving profanities and police stares is a massive leap.
Massive.
But the potential presence of alcohol significantly alters how a person regulates their emotions. It lowers inhibitions and turns minor friction into perceived major slights.
It strips away that rational filter that tells you to say, my apologies, mute the phone, and get on with your day.
Exactly.
Instead, she chose the path of maximum resistance. And flight crews are heavily trained to monitor for that exact behavior, right?
They absolutely are. And if a crew suspects a passenger is under the influence to the point of being belligerent before takeoff, they have a legal obligation to act.
They can't just ignore it.
No. You cannot fly with someone who poses an unpredictable risk to the cabin environment.
Well, the crew definitely took her up on her dare. Here's where it gets really interesting, because local law enforcement actually boards the aircraft.
The sheriff's deputies.
Local sheriff's deputies come marching down the aisle of this American Airlines plane.
That's usually when it ends?
Right. For most rational people, the sight of a badge and a uniform walking towards your seat is the ultimate sobering reality check. That is the moment you gather your bags and quietly step off the plane.
The arrival of law enforcement should signify the definitive end of the negotiation phase. The debate is over.
But she doubles down.
Unbelievable.
Instead of calming down, She escalates even further. The reports detail that she starts shouting directly at the officers. She is waving her hands in the air, continuing to use profanity. And then this is the part that truly crosses the line. She actually grabs one of the deputies' arms while she is arguing with them.
Grabbing a law enforcement officer elevates the incident entirely.
I mean, you just don't do that.
Never.
Yeah.
We have moved from a behavioral disturbance and a violation of airline policy into the territory of a potential physical assault.
Yeah.
Doing that within the highly regulated, confined space of a commercial aircraft is a profound miscalculation. She is no longer just a disruptive passenger. She is a physical threat to an officer.
And the dialogue exchange that happens right after she grabs his arm is almost surreal.
It really is.
It is caught on video, and she is highly agitated, shouting at the deputies, "Can I not express my feelings?"
Think about the environment where she's asking that question. She is surrounded by hundreds of delayed passengers screaming at police officers, and she is framing this meltdown as a fundamental right to emotional expression.
But the deputy's response is a masterclass in boundary setting.
Oh, perfectly handled.
He doesn't argue with her premise. He doesn't tell her she can't express herself. He just looks at her, points his finger straight down the aisle toward the exit of the plane, and delivers this incredibly calm, deadpan line. "Can you express your feelings over there?"
It is a brilliant tactical response. He completely diffuses her attempt to intellectualize her tantrum.
Yeah.
By simply changing the geography of where she is allowed to express those feelings, he removes all the oxygen from her argument. He asserts total authority without matching her level of aggression.
So after several very tense moments of this back and forth, the deputies finally manage to convince her to gather her belongings and leave the plane. But she refuses to leave quietly. As she is doing the walk down the aisle, heading toward the exit, she is pointing her finger at the other passengers, yelling, "Thank you for recording me. I played a video for 30 seconds.
She is desperately clinging to her original metric.
Still with the 30 seconds.
Even as she is being physically escorted off the aircraft by local police, she is still trying to control the narrative, framing herself as the victim of an extreme overreaction over 30 seconds of audio.
The rest of the cabin, however, clearly did not buy that narrative.
Not at all.
The sources note that as she's being escorted out, the other passengers react with overwhelming relief. In fact, many of them actually start clapping and cheering as she is marched out the door.
That applause is a visceral release of collective tension.
I can imagine.
When one passenger disrupts a flight like that, everyone else feels held hostage. Their travel plans are delayed, their comfort is ruined, and their safety feels compromised by unpredictable, aggressive behavior.
Yeah.
The cheering is essentially the silent majority affirming the social contract that she chose to break.
I want you, the listener, to put yourself in those narrow airplane seats for a second. Imagine you are on that Miami to Tampa flight.
Just waiting to go.
You are expecting a routine, quick trip. You just want to catch a nap or read a book. And instead, you are forced to sit through this exhausting, chaotic spectacle. The tension in that cabin must have been thick enough to cut with a knife.
It is draining just to analyze it.
Truly.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, this individual meltdown in Miami isn't just an isolated dramatic anecdote.
Wow.
It is a very clear reflection of a wider, growing crisis within the aviation industry. We are seeing a measurable trend where the basic, unwritten rules of shared spaces are being continuously tested and broken.
And airlines are no longer turning a blind eye to it.
I can't afford to.
The rules are rapidly moving from unwritten social expectations to strictly enforced, codified policies. While American Airlines hasn't made a public comment regarding this specific February incident, our sources indicate that other major players in the industry are taking decisive, zero-tolerance action.
Yeah, big changes are happening.
United Airlines is the prime example here. They have recently updated their official policies, and they made a massive change. Headphones are now absolutely mandatory for playing any audio or video on personal devices during their flights.
That shift from United is monumental.
Really?
Yes, for decades, using headphones was just considered common courtesy. It was an expectation, sure, but it wasn't a heavily policed rule with severe career-ending consequences for a traveler.
It was just being polite.
Exactly. By making headphones mandatory in their official policy, United is clearly signaling that they are no longer willing to rely on the goodwill of their passengers. They are actively formalizing the etiquette.
Let's talk about the consequences of that formalized etiquette, because they are incredibly severe.
They are.
According to the updated guidelines, if a passenger refuses to comply and insists on playing audio out loud, it is not just a verbal warning anymore. They can be actively removed from the aircraft, exactly like the woman in our case study today.
Off the flight immediately.
But it goes even further than a ruined afternoon. Passengers who violate this policy can actually face a permanent ban from ever flying with the airline again.
A permanent flight ban is the absolute ultimate sanction an airline can leverage against a consumer.
It's huge.
The fact that they are willing to utilize that tool over phone volume shows how seriously they are taking the cabin environment. Airlines are recognizing that they have a strict duty of care, and that duty extends beyond just physical safety.
Right.
It includes protecting the basic comfort of the cabin. When someone blasts an unheadphoned video, it degrades the travel experience for dozens of paying customers around them. The airlines are drawing a hard legal line in the sand to protect their product and their compliant passengers.
But I have to ask, isn't a permanent flight ban an overreach for a 30-second video? How do airlines justify that level of punishment for something that, at the end of the day, is just annoying noise?
They justify it through the lens of compliance and crew authority. The punishment isn't necessarily for the noise itself. It is for the insubordination. Flight attendants are highly trained professionals responsible for security and emergency management. When they give you an instruction, even one that seems as minor as put on your headphones, it is a directive, not a suggestion.
It's an order.
Yes. As this incident perfectly illustrates, defying that directive escalates the situation into a security risk. Airlines are making it clear that failure to follow instructions carries real, immediate, and long-lasting consequences.
So what does this all mean for you, the traveler? We have traced a path from a 30-second video clip to police escorts, cheering cabins, and permanent flight bans.
It's quite the journey.
The takeaway is stark. Pack your headphones, triple-check your carry-on before you leave for the airport to make sure you have them. And when you were on board, respect the flight crew.
Definitely.
Because what might start as a petty argument over phone volume can easily end with local sheriff's deputies escorting you off the plane while you become the star of someone else's viral TikTok.
This raises an important question, though, and it is something we should all be thinking about as we navigate these spaces. We are looking at an environment where airlines are now feeling forced to officially mandate common courtesy under the threat of permanent flight bans.
Yeah.
If that is the direction we are heading with something as simple as headphone usage, what happens when this strict zero-tolerance approach to basic etiquette is applied to all the other unwritten rules of flying?
Oh, think about the implications of that. Reclining your seat unannounced right as the person behind you opens their laptop.
Exactly.
Taking up both armrests in the middle seat. Taking your shoes and socks off and putting your bare feet on the bulkhead.
If the social contract continues to fray the way we saw in Miami, will airlines start codifying and strictly penalizing those behaviors too?
Wow.
Are we moving toward a future where a flight attendant writes you a citation for hogging the overhead bin? Where exactly does the corporate regulation of manners end?
That is a wildly interesting thought to consider, and honestly, a little terrifying depending on your armrest habits.
Very true.
It is definitely something for you to mull over the next time you are standing in line at the boarding gate, waiting to step into that metal tube. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive today. We hope this breakdown gave you some valuable new insights into the changing landscape of the friendly skies. Keep learning, keep your headphones handy, and we will catch you on the next deep.
Okay, one question for you. Do you think the airline was justified in removing the passenger from the flight for refusing to use headphones? Or should flight attendants have handled the situation differently before calling law enforcement? Don't forget to comment it. Thanks.